I would understand religious education as education in application to matters of religion. I suppose I would see education in general as having, at least three purposes. I mean, I think the one purpose of an educator is to inform. Sounds old-fashioned. I think it's still a reasonable aspiration of educators is to inform people, to let them know about whatever it is they're talking about. So there would have to be information about religion imparted. Maybe it's history, origins, information about some of the major religions in the world. Second, I would take it that education has an explanatory role. One isn't simply informing children about X, Y, or Z, but trying to explain difficult concepts and aspects of X, Y, and Z. So I would see one element of religious education to involve the explanation of difficult concepts that occur in religious systems, such as the notion of the Trinity, or in Hinduism and Buddhism, the notion of rebirth. And third, it seems to me that an education should be inspirational in a certain sense, that you don't merely inform and explain, but do this in a way which inspires children to inquire for themselves. And I'd have thought in the case of religious education, a crucial component, therefore, is trying to impart to children why religion matters, why it's has been a fundamental aspect of human civilizations and guides many people's lives. I mean, I think any attempt to characterize religion is always complicated by the fact that you've got religion with a big R, and then religions, organized institutional faiths like Christianity, but trying to abstract away from the particular institutionalized faiths, what is it to be religious or to have a religious outlook? Well, I think I want to say there are sort of two essential aspects to this. And the first, I think, is the conviction of the religious person that there has to be some, as it were, measure of human lives, something that our beliefs and values answer to beyond human practices and conventions. So a religious person has got, as it were, to believe that there's some justification for our, let's say, moral commitments beyond the fact that they're the commitments that we happen to have. And then the second aspect, I think, is this, that you've got to think that what our lives are answerable to isn't, as it were, just part and parcel of the natural, observable world. And there are plenty of thinkers, social Darwinists, for example, some Marxists, who think our lives are answerable to something, to the processes of natural selection, to the iron laws of history. But these, I think, are not religious outlooks, precisely because what our lives are answerable to on that approach is something natural. I think for the religious person there's got to be an element of sort of mystery, something beyond the natural world, that our beliefs and values are answerable to. And I think those two aspects, I don't know whether they amount to a good definition of a religious attitude, but I think it's a reasonable approach, neither too broad nor too narrow. It's broad enough to capture religions like Buddhism, which are not theistic. On the other hand, I think it's sufficiently narrow that it doesn't include just any old ideology or set of convictions as religious convictions. I think it would be an enormous pity if room is not made on the curriculum for religious education. I mean, it seems to me that religion is such a fundamental aspect of human civilization and its history, continues to be a crucial element in contemporary cultures, and is of enormous individual and personal significance for large numbers of people, all of which, in my view, adds up to giving religious education a pretty high priority on the curriculum, and one ought to find place for it. I don't think I'd be very happy about, a kind of course which has, week 1 you do Darwinism, week 2 humanism, week 3 Christianity or something. Because again, from my point of view, I think this is regarding what are actually very different concerns with the world, as if they were sort of on the same level. What I do think is, going back to an earlier point, it does seem to me an important ingredient in education is explanation. And I would have thought a proper component in a religious education is to look at possible explanations of religious belief and conviction. And I don't think it would be proper, if you're going to do this seriously, just to ignore those, often rather virulently anti-religious explanations which people have offered. One obvious examples being Marx's, Nietzsche, Freud. All of their attempts to explain why people turn to religion, though in a certain sense I think they don't rule out the possibility of religious belief being true, are nevertheless supposed to convince you that, look, actually you shouldn't take religion very seriously, because people would have religious beliefs however silly they were, because they're oppressed proletarians, or because they need a sort of super father figure as an authority in their lives, or whatever it happens to be. But I take it these are serious approaches to religion in our culture over the last 200 years, and should get their airing. Difficult to teach, I think, in a way that doesn't sway the audience too much, either pro or con those approaches to the explanation of religious belief. I think I would not be happy with the idea of, say, subsuming it under, let's say, the social studies or social sciences, because that's already to be taking a certain, I think, line on what matters about religion, that it's just a social phenomenon, or even worse, I think, is sort of tacking it on at the end of a sort of natural science, the natural science curriculum, on the grounds that, well, we've spent all these weeks talking about science, but we're nice liberal, undogmatic people, so we better, have a couple of weeks on intelligent design and creationism. This would seem to be a very unfortunate way of catering for religious education on the curriculum. But, incorporate it into a wider curriculum component in sort of ethics and philosophy. I would have no particular strong feelings, I think, about, whether there's anything objectionable about that. I don't think it necessarily has to be a subject with its own name, allotted certain hours during the week.